The story of the dark hero begins with a vivid and overwhelming memory that haunts every single corner of his existence. Imagine a small boy stepping out of a warm movie theater into a freezing rainy night in a crowded city. He is flanked by his loving parents, feeling completely safe in their protective shadow. The air is thick with the scent of roasted nuts and wet pavement, and the boy is smiling because he has just seen a thrilling adventure on the silver screen. In that tiny moment, his world is perfectly secure and completely peaceful. But as they take a shortcut down a narrow and dark alleyway, the bright lights of the main street fade away and are replaced by deep shadows. Out of those shadows steps a desperate man holding a cold metal weapon. The stranger demands money and expensive jewelry with a trembling voice full of fear and greed. Before anyone can even process what is happening, a sudden loud noise tears through the quiet night. In a fraction of a second, the boy watches both of his parents collapse onto the wet ground. A string of delicate white pearls snaps, scattering bright beads across the dark, dirty puddles like tiny frozen tears. The stranger flees into the night, leaving behind a terrified child who is now entirely alone in a cold and uncaring world. This single terrible event becomes the central pivot upon which the rest of his life will forever turn. The boy falls to his knees in the mud, clutching the cold hands of his parents and screaming into the heavy rain for help that comes far too late. The flashing red lights of distant police vehicles arrive long after the damage is done. In those painful hours spent in police stations and cold rooms, something fundamental inside the young child breaks into 1,000 sharp pieces. For most people, a traumatic loss of this magnitude produces a life of permanent despair or deep depression. Many victims fall apart entirely, crushed under the immense weight of their own grief. Others grow up to be bitter and cynical, believing that the world is a cruel place where effort and goodness mean absolutely nothing. But inside the broken soul of this specific child, a strange and powerful transformation takes place. He looks at the dark alley and the cold street, and he makes a solemn promise to the memory of his mother and father. He swears that he will spend every remaining breath of his life fighting the exact kind of evil that ruined his family, ensuring that no other innocent child will ever have to sit in the dark puddles of that terrible city crying for help. As the boy grows into a young man, he comes to understand that a solemn promise alone is completely useless without the proper tools to back it up. Simply being angry at bad people will not stop a bullet and will not clean up a corrupt city. He realizes that he possesses massive financial wealth inherited from his family, but he quickly comes to see that money sitting in a bank account cannot fix the deep sickness of his home. Money can buy comfortable clothes and fancy cars, but it cannot purchase justice or protect a child in a dark alley. Therefore, he makes the radical decision to abandon his comfortable life entirely. He steps away from the massive family estate, the luxurious lifestyle, and the easy future that awaits him. He packs a simple bag and vanishes from public view, traveling to the farthest and most dangerous corners of the earth in total secret. He seeks out the most skilled experts, the most brutal fighters, and the sharpest analytical minds across different continents, determined to learn everything a human being can possibly know. His journey across the globe is an endless gauntlet of physical pain and intense mental endurance. In the freezing mountain ranges of Asia, he trains under ancient warriors who teach him how to control his breathing and ignore sub-zero temperatures. He learns how to move through deep snow without making a single sound, and how to use the terrain to vanish from sight in an instant. In obscure cities and hidden schools, he studies every major form of hand-to-hand combat, mastering the fluid movements of martial arts until his striking and blocking become second nature. He does not train to show off or to win trophies in a clean arena. He trains with a cold and singular focus, knowing that any mistake in a real fight could mean his death and the failure of his entire mission. He forces his muscles to grow dense and powerful, and he tests his stamina by running until his lungs burn and his limbs feel like heavy iron. He learns how to endure severe physical beatings without surrendering, turning his body into an indestructible shield capable of weathering any storm. Physical strength alone is only half of the equation, because a warrior who cannot outsmart his enemy will eventually be defeated by a clever trap. Therefore, he devotes equal time to sharpening his mind into a razor blade of pure rational logic. He spends long nights in dusty libraries studying advanced criminology, learning how criminal minds operate, how criminal networks organize themselves, and how bad actors manipulate law enforcement. He studies complex chemistry so he can identify rare poisons and chemical compounds by sight and smell. He learns the art of forensic science, discovering how to read a crime scene like an open book where a single stray hair or a tiny scuff mark on a wooden floor tells the entire truth of what took place. He studies multiple languages so he can understand anyone he encounters across the world. He learns the subtle art of disguise and psychological manipulation, studying human body language so he can tell when someone is lying just by watching the twitch of an eye or the rhythm of their breathing. He treats his intellect as his primary weapon, understanding that physical violence is merely the final tool to be used when all strategic options have been exhausted. After more than a decade of relentless preparation, the young man finally returns to his native city as a fully formed master of body and mind. Yet upon his return, he discovers that the city has decayed even further in his absence. The criminal underworld has tightened its grip on every major institution. Police officers take dirty money to look the other way. Judges sign corrupt orders for bribes, and local politicians serve the interests of powerful crime bosses rather than the innocent citizens who elected them. The normal legal system is completely paralyzed by systemic corruption. Honest people live in constant fear, shutting their doors tight at night and praying that the dark forces of the city will pass them by. He attempts his first night of vigilantism in simple clothes, trying to stop street crime directly with his bare hands. But he quickly realizes that simply beating up street thugs one by one is an impossible task that will change nothing in the long run. He is just one man fighting an endless ocean of bad behavior, and the criminals do not respect or fear a normal person in a jacket. This realization brings him to a vital turning point in his mission. He sits in the quiet library of his large, empty home, bleeding from a deep knife wound and feeling the heavy weight of failure pressing down on his chest. He understands that to truly change the city, he cannot merely fight criminals as an ordinary man. He must become an idea, a terrifying mystery, and an immortal symbol that strikes deep psychological terror into the hearts of corrupt people. As he sits in the dark pondering this difficult problem, a large bat crashes through the window of his room, fluttering wildly through the air before landing on a heavy stone statue. The sight of the creature instantly unlocks a forgotten memory from his early childhood, a time when he accidentally fell into a deep, dark cave beneath his family land and was swarmed by thousands of shrieking bats. He remembers the absolute, paralyzing fear that took over his young heart in that dark cave. In that exact moment, the final piece of his life puzzle falls cleanly into place. He realizes that fear is a powerful weapon, and that the cowardly criminal element of his city can be defeated if he turns their own tactics against them. He decides to take his own deepest childhood terror and project it onto the criminals who hide in the shadows. He begins designing a special suit crafted from advanced dark materials. He adds a long flowing cape that catches the wind to look like giant leather wings, and he creates a pointed mask that hides his human face while giving him the appearance of a creature born from the night. He builds specialized tools, silent vehicles, and advanced tracking devices, all carefully engineered to make him seem more like an unnatural phantom than a mortal human being. He transforms his childhood trauma into an armor of legendary proportions, stepping out into the foggy night ready to launch an unyielding crusade against the darkness. This first part of his journey provides a profound practical lesson for anyone listening to his story. It demonstrates that massive personal pain does not have to be the end of your life story. but can instead become the very foundation of your greatest strength. Most people allow tragic events to define them as permanent victims, spending their lives feeling helpless against the cruel twists of fate. This man demonstrates that through radical self-discipline, intense physical work, and relentless mental preparation, an individual can take control of their destiny and construct purpose out of total chaos. He shows us that motivation comes and goes like the wind, but absolute commitment to a clear principle can carry a person through the hardest trials. He did not wait for someone else to come save his city, nor did he sit around wishing the world was fair. He recognized a terrible problem, took full responsibility for his own growth, and turned himself into the solution through pure strength of will. The second part of his story centers on the most famous and difficult boundary in his entire crusade, which is his absolute refusal to take a human life. To understand why this rule is so vital, we must look at the immense pressure he faces every single night in the dark streets. He captures violent criminals who have committed horrifying acts against helpless families. Many citizens, and even many honest police officers, constantly ask why he does not simply eliminate the worst monsters permanently. They argue that taking out one extremely dangerous person would instantly save hundreds of future lives. On the surface, this argument sounds logical to a desperate city living in fear, but the dark hero sees a much deeper and more terrifying truth behind that simple logic. He knows that taking a human life is a doorway that can never be closed once a person steps through it. His absolute rule against killing is not designed to show mercy to evil people, nor is it meant to protect criminals from suffering consequences for their actions. It is designed to protect his own mind from collapsing into total darkness. He understands better than anyone else the massive amount of anger, grief, and physical power he carries inside himself every single day. If he grants himself the right to decide who deserves to live and who deserves to die, he removes the only boundary holding back his own dark impulses. He knows his own mind, and he realizes that if he kills one murderer tonight, it becomes much easier to kill a thief tomorrow, and eventually anyone who stands in his way. He would slowly transform from a protector into an absolute tyrant who rules the city through execution and blood. This rigid boundary creates a deep and agonizing personal struggle that weighs heavily on his conscience every hour of his life. When a dangerous criminal escapes from prison and harms more innocent people, the hero bears the heavy guilt of those actions in silence. He knows in his heart that if he had ended the criminal during their previous encounter, those new victims would still be safe. Carrying this emotional burden is a form of quiet torment that never truly stops. Yet he willingly accepts this massive suffering because he understands the long-term cost of breaking his principle. He chooses to suffer personal guilt rather than compromise the foundation of his mission, demonstrating a level of emotional discipline that few humans could ever sustain. There is a fundamental difference between personal vengeance and true justice. Vengeance is born out of anger, pain, and the desire to inflict harm on someone who hurt you. Justice is born out of a desire to build a fair world where rules apply equally to everyone, regardless of their power or status. The dark hero understands that if he acts as judge, jury, and executioner, he is simply replacing the old criminal networks with a new form of terror. He wants his city to eventually heal itself and build strong, honest institutions. By leaving captured criminals tied up for the police and the legal courts, he is showing the citizens that the proper system must be allowed to work, even when that system is deeply broken and slow. He refuses to put himself above the law, even while operating outside of it. This commitment to a line that can never be crossed provides a crucial lesson for anyone navigating difficult times in their own personal life. In moments of extreme stress, anger, or temptation, it is very easy to justify bad behavior by telling ourselves that the situation demands it, or that the end result will justify the means. We often see people abandon their core principles when life gets hard, or when they feel justified in hurting someone who hurt them. The The story of the dark hero teaches us that our principles are meaningless if we drop them the moment they become difficult to maintain. True strength is demonstrated when a person stands by their core boundaries, even when it brings them immense pain, frustration, and sacrifice. Furthermore, his refusal to use guns connects directly to this absolute rule. He views firearms as lazy and cowardly tools that exist solely to destroy life from a distance. A gun allows a person to take a life in a fraction of a second without feeling the weight of what they are doing. By rejecting firearms entirely, he forces himself to rely on his physical training, his sharp intellect, and his tactical positioning. He puts his own body on the line in every single encounter, refusing to take the easy path. This forces him to stay focused, alert, and careful, ensuring that every action he takes in the dark is measured and controlled down to the smallest detail. Ultimately, this iron rule is what separates a hero from a monster. In a world full of individuals who make excuses for their worst behavior, he stands as an unyielding example of self-control. He proves that no matter how much pain a person carries, and no matter how much power they possess, they always have the power to choose restraint over destruction. He shows the city that even in the absolute darkest environment, a human being can decide to hold onto their humanity and refuse to become the very evil they are fighting against. To fully understand the inner workings of his complex mind, we must carefully examine the calculated relationship he maintains with his immense financial wealth and his public identity. To the vast majority of citizens watching the news, he appears to be nothing more than a privileged heir living a life of total luxury and shallow excess. They see a wealthy young man driving fast sports cars, attending grand charity galas, and spending vast sums of money on frivolous entertainments without a single care in the world. He intentionally plays the role of a foolish and irresponsible playboy who is far too self-absorbed to care about the real problems of his decaying city. This foolish public persona is constructed with incredible precision, serving as a vital shield to protect his night operations. He knows that human beings are naturally inclined to judge others by surface appearances, and nobody would ever suspect that a lazy billionaire spends his nights jumping across wet rooftops in heavy body armor. This calculated performance requires a massive amount of personal discipline, because he must constantly endure the silent judgment of good people who view his public persona with total contempt. Honest police officers, hardworking charity organizers, and concerned citizens look at the wealthy playboy and see a useless individual wasting his massive inheritance on selfish pleasures. He must smile, make silly jokes, and act completely ignorant while these good people express their frustration directly to his face. He cannot defend his reputation, nor can he explain that he spent the previous night bleeding in a dark alley to save a family from violent criminals. He completely surrenders his personal vanity and accepts public disrespect because maintaining his secret cover is far more important than his ego. He understands that public praise is a meaningless distraction that only serves to feed human arrogance. His financial empire is not merely a cover story, but a complex engine that fuels every single technical aspect of his crusade. Through a sprawling network of corporate divisions, research facilities, and advanced laboratories, his company develops state-of-the-art technology, advanced medical compounds, military-grade armor, and prototype vehicles. He carefully redirects these high-tech developments away from commercial markets and channels them directly into his private basement. He uses complex accounting methods and silent shell corporations to purchase raw materials, industrial machinery, and specialized computer parts without raising the suspicion of government regulators or corporate boards. He converts pure paper wealth into tangible defense systems, turning his inherited fortune into an incredible fortress of high technology dedicated to the protection of the innocent. The vast difference between his two lives is best reflected in the physical spaces he inhabits every single day. High above the ground sits a massive and historical estate, filled with expensive artwork, grand chandeliers, polished hardwood floors, and warm fireplaces. This grand house represents the legacy of his family and the immense comfort that his money could easily provide. Yet he treats this luxurious mansion as little more than a stage setting for his public performance. His true living space is not the warm rooms of the house above, but the cold and damp stone cavern hidden deep beneath the bedrock of his estate. In this dark subterranean world, surrounded by underground water, roosting bats, and advanced technological equipment, he strips away the polished suit and drops the fake smile. The cave is a place stripped entirely of shallow comfort, serving as a silent cathedral of pure purpose where he works, trains, and monitors his city around the clock. Living this double life demands the total sacrifice of normal human happiness and genuine emotional intimacy. A regular human being relies on close friendships, romantic relationships, and open communication with loved ones to navigate the stress of daily life. The dark hero must actively deny himself these fundamental human comforts. He knows that forming a deep romantic bond or letting a close friend into his inner world puts that person in immediate mortal danger from his dangerous enemies. Furthermore, he realizes that emotional attachments can cloud his rational judgment in critical moments when he must make swift decisions under intense pressure. He constantly pushes people away, building cold emotional walls around his heart to keep his mission completely focused. He accepts a life of severe emotional isolation, carrying his painful burdens alone in the dark so that the people around him remain safe. His lifestyle presents a radical rejection of the traditional pursuit of pleasure that dominates modern society. Most people who acquire massive wealth immediately use it to purchase absolute comfort, attempting to shield themselves from physical pain, difficult labor, and uncomfortable environments. He takes the opposite approach, utilizing his massive resources to fund a relentless personal war against crime while living like an ascetic soldier. He eats simple meals designed strictly for athletic performance rather than taste, sleeps only a few hours a day when his body demands it, and subjects his physical frame to brutal physical conditioning every single morning. He knows that physical comfort breeds mental softness, and mental softness leads directly to fatal mistakes in the field. By deliberately rejecting the easy life that his wealth offers, he keeps his senses sharp and his body prepared for the unpredictable violent realities of his nightly crusade. In standard storytelling, a masked hero puts on a disguise to go out into the world and fight crime, returning home to take off the mask and resume their normal human life. In this specific case, the traditional dynamic is completely inverted. The smiling billionaire in the expensive suit is the actual disguise, a carefully constructed illusion designed to manipulate the perceptions of high society. The dark creature operating in the shadows of the night is the true and authentic self. When he puts on the dark cowl and steps into the foggy streets, he is not putting on a fake personality. He is stripping away the lie of his daytime existence. His true life is the mission, and everything else is merely tactical theater meant to keep the world from discovering his true identity. Even within his private estate, the only person allowed to see his raw emotional pain is his loyal butler and father figure. This elderly companion represents the last remaining link to his childhood before the tragic night in the alleyway. The butler tends to his bleeding wounds, cooks his basic meals, and offers calm wisdom when the weight of the city threatens to crush his spirit. Yet even in the presence of his closest confidant, the hero rarely allows himself to relax completely. The driving force behind his crusade is so absolute that it consumes his thoughts during every waking hour. He views his own human needs as mere maintenance requirements for a machine that must keep running to protect others. This profound separation between public perception and true identity offers a powerful practical lesson for anyone seeking to live a life of deep purpose. In a world obsessed with social media validation, public applause, and constant attention, the dark hero demonstrates the incredible strength found in silent dedication. He shows us that true accomplishment does not require public praise, and that real character is defined by what a person does when nobody is watching. He proves that an individual can achieve extraordinary things when they completely abandon their need for external approval and focus entirely on the quality of their work. His story reminds us that shallow wealth and social status are completely meaningless on their own, and that true fulfillment comes from using our resources, energy, and talents to serve a cause much greater than ourselves. To fully understand the mind of the dark hero, we must examine the strange and dangerous enemies he fights night after night in the foggy streets. These individuals are not ordinary thieves who steal money out of basic greed. They are deeply broken human beings who represent dangerous and extreme ways of looking at the world. In many ways, each major criminal he faces is a dark mirror, reflecting a specific piece of his own personality turned upside down. The city seems to attract and create these extreme personalities, forcing the guardian of the night to fight an endless war of ideas in addition to physical battles. By studying how he responds to these dangerous individuals, we gain a much clearer understanding of why he holds so tightly to his own rules and boundaries. The most prominent and terrifying adversary is the laughing clown with the painted face. This man represents total chaos and the firm belief that human life has no genuine meaning or value. The clown operates on the idea that the entire world is a cruel, random, and meaningless joke, and that all human rules, morals, and laws are fragile lies constructed by frightened people. He constantly attempts to prove that any decent person, no matter how pure or righteous, can be pushed into total madness if they experience just one exceptionally bad day. He inflicts terrible suffering on innocent people not to gain wealth or power, but simply to drag the rest of society down into his own dark pit of despair. He wants to show everyone that underneath our polished manners, we are all wild and selfish beasts waiting to tear each other apart. The dark hero stands as an unyielding wall in direct opposition to this chaotic mindset. Every single time they fight, the clown tries to force the hero to break his iron rule against killing. The clown knows that if he can convince the hero to take his life in anger, he wins the ultimate debate over human nature. He wants to prove that even the greatest guardian of justice will eventually surrender to violent impulses when pushed far enough. But every single time the dark hero controls his anger and leaves the clown alive for the authorities, he scores a massive victory for human discipline. He proves to the entire city that a human being can go through absolute physical and mental hell, lose everything they love, and still make the conscious choice to remain decent, restrained, and moral. He demonstrates that human life is not a meaningless joke, and that our personal choices matter far more than the tragic events that happen to us. Another deeply tragic adversary is the former prosecutor with the badly scarred face. This man was once a brave champion of the law who fought alongside the dark hero to clean up the corrupt courts and police force. However, after suffering a horrifying physical attack that destroyed half of his face and broke his mind, he completely lost his faith in human justice. He came to believe that the world is governed entirely by cruel and random chance, and that fairness is nothing more than a blind roll of the dice. To reflect this depressing belief, he carries a two-sided coin with one side horribly scratched, flipping it in the air to make every major decision. If the coin lands on the clean side, he shows mercy, but if it lands on the scarred side, he inflicts terrible harm. He has completely surrendered his own personal free will and moral responsibility to a simple piece of metal spinning in the air. The hero views this scarred former friend with profound sadness, because he remembers the good man he used to be. Yet he fights him with complete determination, rejecting the depressing idea that humanity is at the mercy of blind luck. The hero insists through his daily actions that human beings are always responsible for the choices they make, regardless of how much pain they have suffered. He refuses to let his former ally use a coin flip as an excuse to commit terrible crimes. By continually confronting this enemy, The hero demonstrates that true justice requires active human effort, deep moral choices, and constant personal responsibility, rather than surrendering to chance or pretending that fate decides our actions. The adversary, who constantly leaves complex riddles and puzzles, presents a very different kind of danger. This man possesses a brilliant analytical mind, but his intellect is completely corrupted by massive arrogance and deep insecurity. He does not commit crimes simply to gain money, but rather to prove to the world that he is smarter than everyone else. He constructs elaborate and deadly traps, leaving subtle clues behind because he desperately craves the attention and admiration of the public. He views human beings as simple pawns in a giant game of chess, treating human life with total coldness while seeking to validate his own massive ego. He represents the grave danger of possessing great intelligence without any guiding moral compass or genuine compassion for others. The dark hero counters this arrogant enemy by using his own superior intellect for a completely selfless purpose. Where the man of riddles uses his brain to confuse, manipulate, and destroy, the hero uses his mind to protect, solve, and heal. The hero does not solve the complex puzzles to show off his intelligence or feed his pride, but solely to save innocent lives before time runs out. By consistently outsmarting this dangerous individual, the hero shows the city that true mental strength is not measured by vanity or public praise, but by how effectively a person uses their intelligence to serve and protect their community. We must also examine the doctor who specializes in the psychological study of terror. This dangerous individual uses advanced chemical compounds to bring out the deepest, most terrifying nightmares hidden inside the minds of his victims. He takes pleasure in watching normal people descend into absolute panic and madness as they hallucinate their worst fears coming to life. He views fear as a destructive disease that breaks down the human spirit, using it to control and torment everyone around him. The hero provides a profound contrast to this evil doctor in how he approaches the concept of fear. The hero understands that fear is a natural human emotion that can be harnessed for good when properly understood and controlled. Where the doctor uses fear to break minds and cause mindless panic, the hero uses fear as a precise tactical tool to stop violent criminals from harming innocent families. Furthermore, the hero repeatedly confronts his own deepest fears, proving that a disciplined person can face their absolute worst nightmares, process the horror in a rational way, and emerge stronger on the other side. He demonstrates that fear does not have to paralyze us, but can instead serve as a powerful reminder of what we are fighting to protect. Finally, there are the powerful leaders who believe that the city is so thoroughly corrupt that it cannot be saved by normal means. These ideological extremists argue that the entire social structure must be completely destroyed and burned to the ground, so that a new and pure society can be built from the ashes. They view the loss of thousands of innocent lives as a necessary price to pay for what they perceive as ultimate long-term order. They possess incredible willpower and discipline, but their vision for the world is totally lacking in human mercy and individual compassion. The dark hero violently rejects this extreme worldview, standing firmly in defense of his imperfect city and its vulnerable citizens. He acknowledges that the city is deeply sick and full of corruption, but he stubbornly believes that every single human life has value and that the city can be redeemed piece by piece. He refuses to sacrifice innocent people today for the promise of a perfect tomorrow. He proves that true strength lies in fighting the slow, difficult, and unglamorous daily battle to protect lives and rebuild broken systems, rather than taking the easy and destructive shortcut of tearing everything down. By standing like a rock against this vast collection of dark mindsets, the hero teaches us how to navigate the complex moral challenges of our own lives. He shows us that when we face people who are cruel, arrogant, chaotic, or manipulative, we do not have to copy their bad behavior or surrender to their depressing views of the world. He proves that an individual can remain grounded, rational, and compassionate even when surrounded by total darkness. His daily battle against these monstrous ideas reminds us that the hardest fight we will ever face is the fight to keep our own minds clean, disciplined, and dedicated to what is right. Even though his crusade began in absolute loneliness, the dark hero eventually comes to understand that a single person cannot carry the entire weight of a broken world forever. As the years pass in his foggy city, he encounters young people who have suffered terrifying personal losses, almost identical to his own childhood tragedy. He sees young orphans whose parents were taken away by violent crime, standing alone in cold rooms with bright eyes full of burning anger and deep sadness. Many people in society would look at these angry children and see tragic statistics or future troublemakers. But when the dark hero looks into their eyes, he sees a painful reflection of the small boy kneeling in the dirty alleyway many years ago. He recognizes that without proper guidance and love, this raw emotional pain will either destroy these children from the inside or turn them into bitter criminals who seek destructive revenge against the world. He makes the profound decision to take these lost children under his wing, not to build an army of child soldiers, but to save them from the terrible darkness that consumed his own youth. He opens the doors of his large estate, offering them safety, warm shelter, advanced education, and a supportive home environment. He understands that simple sympathy and pity are not enough to heal a broken spirit. Instead, he provides them with intense physical training, teaching them how to defend themselves, how to process their grief, and how to focus their chaotic anger into a noble purpose. By giving them a structured mission, he helps them channel their personal pain into constructive action, preventing them from falling into the dark pit of hatred that nearly ruined his own life. There is a striking and intentional contrast in how he prepares these young allies for their work in the city. While he dresses in dark gray and heavy black armor to resemble a terrifying phantom of the night, he allows his young partners to wear bright colors like yellow, red, and green. This choice carries a deep symbolic meaning for both the city and the hero himself. He wants the citizens to look at these young partners and see vibrant symbols of light, courage, and hope. He wants the city to know that the future does not have to belong to fear and darkness. Furthermore, he intentionally draws the primary attention and dangerous gunfire of enemies toward his own heavily armored frame, stepping in front of his young allies to absorb the brunt of any physical attack. He acts as a dark shield protecting bright lights, ensuring that they can operate safely while learning how to make the world a better place. His ultimate goal as a teacher and father figure is surprising in its deep generosity and humility. He does not want these young people to grow up to be exact copies of himself. He knows that his own life is defined by severe emotional isolation, constant physical pain, and a brooding nature that prevents him from enjoying normal human happiness. He considers his own extreme lifestyle to be a necessary burden that he must bear, but he desperately wants something much better for his students. He works tirelessly to ensure that they grow up to be healthier, happier, and more emotionally balanced adults than he could ever hope to be. He encourages them to form close friendships, build romantic relationships, and experience the simple joys of a normal life that he willingly gave up long ago. He measures his success as a mentor not by how well they copy his dark methods, but by how successfully they move past their trauma and find genuine peace in their personal lives. However, taking young people into a dangerous world carries immense risks, and he experiences devastating heartbreak when tragedy strikes his surrogate family. In one horrifying incident, a violent enemy captures and destroys one of his young partners before he can arrive to save the child. This catastrophic loss strikes a crushing blow directly to his heart, bringing back all the overwhelming grief and powerlessness he felt on the night his parents died. He blames himself entirely for bringing a young person into his dangerous crusade, carrying an incredible weight of personal guilt that threatens to shatter his mind. The cold cave becomes even darker, and for a time, He retreats into total isolation, believing that he is a curse to everyone who dares to care about him. Yet even in the midst of this profound grief, he eventually demonstrates the absolute resilience of the human spirit. He does not give up his mission, nor does he allow his overwhelming pain to drive him into breaking his core moral rules. He processes the devastating loss, honors the memory of his fallen partner, and slowly continues his work protecting the innocent. Over time, he learns that locking his heart away from human connection out of fear of future pain is a cowardly choice. He eventually allows new allies into his life, building a larger and more diverse network of brave individuals who share his vision for a safer city. This willingness to rebuild his inner circle shows that true emotional strength involves remaining open to love and trust, even after suffering the worst imaginable loss. As these young allies grow into mature adults, many of them choose to branch out on their own, leaving his shadow to protect other cities or take on new identities. Rather than feeling abandoned or angry, the dark hero feels a quiet sense of pride watching them succeed independently. They take the intense training, strict moral boundaries, and deep analytical skills he taught them, adapting those lessons to build their own unique paths as heroes. Some become bright beacons of hope in distant places, while others become brilliant leaders who command teams of exceptional individuals. They prove that the principles of courage, discipline, and justice can take many different forms, expanding far beyond a single city or a single dark costume. Through this sprawling surrogate family, the dark hero creates something far more meaningful and enduring than a simple collection of secret gadgets or armored vehicles. He constructs a living, breathing legacy of hope that will easily survive long after his own physical body breaks down. He knows better than anyone that he is merely a mortal man subject to aging, injury, and eventual death. One day, his reflexes will slow down, his muscles will weaken, and he will no longer be able to jump across the rainy rooftops. But because he invested his time, wisdom, and love into the next generation, the mission to protect the innocent will never die with him. The young warriors he raised will carry the torch forward, ensuring that the dark corners of the world will always have brave defenders standing in the light. This powerful chapter of his life offers a profound lesson about the nature of family, mentorship, and legacy for anyone listening to his story. It proves that family is not defined solely by bloodlines, but by the conscious choices we make to care for, protect, and guide one another through hard times. It shows us that true leadership is not about controlling others or demanding absolute obedience, but about empowering those around us to become the best versions of themselves. Most importantly, it reminds us that no matter how deep our personal trauma may be, we have the capacity to break the cycle of pain, create a loving community out of total tragedy, and build a brighter future for the generations that follow. When we step back to look at the full picture of his life, we see a story about the ultimate triumph of human will over impossible odds. Unlike many other powerful heroes who fly through the sky or possess incredible magic, this guardian of the night is simply a mortal man made of muscle, bone, and blood. He bleeds when he is cut, he breaks when he falls from great heights, and his body gets tired after hours of continuous fighting. He sits in meetings with beings who can move mountains and freeze oceans with a single breath, yet he stands beside them as an equal partner. He proves to the entire world that a single human being, through sheer discipline and endless study, can stand tall among gods and monsters without ever taking a step backward. His incredible ability to stand against impossible threats comes down to his legendary level of preparation. He never enters a room without knowing every single exit, and he never faces an enemy without studying their weaknesses down to the smallest detail. He understands that hope is not a tactical strategy, and luck is something only careless people rely on. He spends endless hours running computer simulations, testing defensive equipment, and building detailed backup plans for every conceivable scenario. He creates hidden contingency plans for every person he meets, including his closest allies, because he knows that anyone can lose control or be manipulated by dark forces. This intense preparation is not born out of paranoia, but out of a deep responsibility to protect the innocent no matter what happens. The physical cost of this lifestyle accumulates continuously as the years move forward. His body becomes a living map of past battles, covered in thick scar tissue, repaired bones, and aching joints that hurt every time the cold rain falls. Every single morning, he must force himself out of bed through sheer willpower, ignoring the persistent pain that tells him to rest. He knows that his physical strength will eventually fade with age, and his reactions will one day become a fraction of a second slower. Yet he never complains about his broken body, nor does he feel pity for himself. He views his physical form as a tool that must be used until it is completely worn out in the service of his mission. What makes his victory so profound is that he wins his battles through intelligence and emotional control rather than brute force. When an enemy tries to push him into a rage, he responds with total stillness and cold calculations. When the entire city descends into total panic, his mind becomes sharper and clearer. He treats every complex situation as a puzzle to be systematically solved through observation, evidence, and logical thinking. He demonstrates that brute force can destroy a building, but only a sharp and disciplined mind can rebuild a broken society. By choosing reason over impulsive emotional reactions, he shows us how to stay calm and focused when the world around us is falling apart. His ultimate legacy is the proof that human beings possess an unlimited capacity to create light out of total darkness. He took the worst night of his life, a moment that should have broken him completely, and used it to build a shield that protected millions of people for decades. He shows everyone that we are not defined by the terrible things that happened to us in the past, but by the choices we make every single day. He proves that a dedicated heart and an unyielding mind can overcome physical limitations, deep loss, and systemic evil. When the narration ends and the audio stops, his story leaves us with a quiet, powerful reminder that inside every human heart lies the potential to stand up in the dark, refuse to give up, and fight for what is right. Part 7: The Legend That Outlives the Man. As the long years roll forward like a slow, silent river, the reality of physical aging becomes an inescapable truth for the mortal guardian. A human being can train their muscles to peak performance and sharpen their mind to extraordinary clarity, but no man can freeze the relentless march of time. The hair around his temples begins to turn gray. The old bone fractures ache whenever the damp fog rolls off the harbor, and his body takes twice as long to heal from a bad fall. He sits alone in the cold subterranean space, carefully wrapping his bruised hands in white tape, fully aware that his physical peak is slowly slipping into the past. Many individuals would feel deep terror or bitter regret at the sight of their own physical decline, but this warrior views his aging body with calm acceptance. He always understood that his physical frame was merely a temporary vessel designed to launch a permanent idea into the world. He knows that a mortal man will eventually tire and break, but a pure symbol built on justice and discipline can live forever in the collective mind of a city. The psychological toll of spending decades immersed in the darkest corners of human nature is perhaps an even heavier burden than the physical injuries. Night after night, year after year, he stares directly into the faces of people who have abandoned all decency, honesty, and compassion. He walks through crime scenes that would cause normal people to lose their sanity, listening to the tragic stories of broken families and damaged lives. To survive this constant exposure to human cruelty without becoming bitter, cruel, or cold requires an astonishing level of mental discipline. He must continuously guard his own heart against the slow creep of cynicism. He reminds himself every morning that the violent criminals he encounters in the shadows do not represent the whole of humanity. He forces himself to remember the quiet store owners who work hard to feed their children, the brave nurses who work late shifts in crowded hospitals, and the honest citizens who refuse to take bribes. He keeps his spirit clean by focusing on the quiet goodness that still exists in the quiet streets, remembering that he fights not out of hatred for the dark, but out of absolute love for the light. We must also examine how his presence reshapes the entire environment around him over the course of many decades. When he first stepped out onto the rainy rooftops, the city was completely controlled by traditional organized crime networks that operated in the open with total confidence. By systematically dismantling those corrupt networks through fear and evidence, he forced the criminal underworld to change its entire nature. The old crime bosses who cared only about money and power were slowly replaced by strange, theatrical individuals who operated on radical ideas and wild schemes. Some critics might argue that his presence inadvertently created these bizarre new threats, but a deeper look reveals a very different reality. The city was already deeply sick and collapsing under its own rot, and his appearance simply forced the hidden madness out into the open where it could be confronted directly. Furthermore, his courageous presence inspired regular citizens to start standing up for themselves. Honest police officers found the courage to report corrupt bosses, brave journalists began writing bold truth, and ordinary people began to believe that their city was truly worth saving. He acted as a powerful catalyst, waking the sleeping spirit of a broken community and showing them that courage is infectious. We must also consider the profound psychological mechanism of turning personal terror into a constructive force. Most human beings spend their entire lives running away from the things that frighten them, building thick walls around their lives to avoid discomfort, uncertainty, and physical danger. The dark hero demonstrates a radically different approach to human fear. Instead of hiding from his deepest childhood trauma, he walks directly into the dark cave of his own mind and studies the exact things that terrify him. He examines the nature of fear until he understands its precise physical and psychological effects on the human body. He learns that fear causes the heart to race, the hands to shake, and the rational mind to freeze. By mastering his own fear through exposure and breathing techniques, he gains the ability to remain calm while everyone around him is panicking. He then takes that exact same fear, packages it into a silent dark phantom, and unleashes it against the cowardly criminals who inflict terror on others. He transforms a personal weakness into an overwhelming strength, showing us that our greatest fears often hold the key to our greatest power if we have the courage to face them directly. The daily life of this guardian is governed by a strict rhythm of habits and routines that keep his mind anchored during the darkest storms. Every single day begins with mandatory physical training, detailed study of criminal reports, and careful maintenance of his technical equipment. He does not wait to feel motivated before he begins his work, because he understands that feelings are temporary and unreliable. On days when his body is exhausted, his muscles ache, or his spirit feels heavy with grief, he relies entirely on the cold power of established habit to carry him forward. He puts on his boots, runs his physical drills, and reviews his tactical maps regardless of his emotional state. This unwavering commitment to daily routine is a vital lesson for anyone striving to achieve great goals in their own life. Motivation might spark a project, but only disciplined habit will carry it to completion across months and years of hard labor. By building an unshakable structure of daily discipline, he ensures that his mission remains strong even on the days when his human spirit feels weak. The question of what happens when the original founder can no longer put on the heavy armor is a crucial aspect of his overall strategy. A selfish leader attempts to make themselves indispensable, ensuring that everything falls apart the moment they leave the stage. The dark hero takes the exact opposite approach by designing a system that can flourish long after his personal involvement ends. Through the careful training of his young partners and the creation of strong bonds with honest community leaders, he constructs a flexible network that can adapt to future challenges. He teaches his successors that the dark costume is not a personal possession, but a heavy public trust that must be earned through sacrifice and maintained through flawless integrity. The identity of the person inside the suit matters far less than the principles that the suit represents to the public. When the day eventually arrives that his old injuries force him to step back from the frontline street work, he transitions seamlessly into the role of tactical guide, master teacher, and strategic planner, ensuring that the new generation has the full benefit of his decades of hard-earned wisdom. In the quiet hours just before dawn, when the morning sun begins to paint the sky in soft shades of gray and gold, the long night shift finally comes to an end. He returns to the grand estate, steps out of the heavy dark armor, and cleans the black paint from around his tired eyes. He stands by the large glass window of his quiet room, watching the early morning workers begin their daily routines. He sees milk delivery trucks driving down clean streets, parents walking their young children to early school buses, and shopkeepers sweeping the sidewalks in front of their stores. None of these hardworking people know that this quiet, tired man standing in the window bled in a dark alley just 3 hours earlier to keep their streets safe. He does not need them to know his name, nor does he crave their public gratitude. Seeing a small child walk safely down the sidewalk holding hands with their mother without fear is the only reward he will ever require. That simple sight of peaceful daily life is the quiet proof that his immense sacrifice was worth every broken bone and every sleepless night. The story of this legendary figure reaches far beyond the boundaries of fiction and entertainment, offering profound real-world guidance for anyone facing overwhelming obstacles. Every human being encounters their own metaphorical dark alley at some point in life, a terrifying moment when unexpected tragedy, sudden loss, or severe hardship breaks their peaceful world into pieces. In those heavy moments of personal darkness, it is very easy to surrender to bitterness, anger, or total despair. We are often tempted to blame the world, abandon our personal values, or hurt others because we have been hurt. The philosophy of the dark hero stands as a bright beacon showing us a much higher path. He proves that we have the ultimate power to take our deepest pain and convert it into a shield that protects others. He teaches us that true strength is not measured by physical power or massive wealth, but by our ability to maintain self-control, moral integrity, and deep compassion when everything around us is falling into chaos. When you listen to the narration of his life and reflect on his endless war against the darkness, remember that the true power of the Bat does not live in a hidden cave, a high-tech car, or a dark costume. The true power of the Bat lives inside the disciplined human mind and the brave human heart. It is found whenever an ordinary person decides to stand up for someone who is being mistreated. It is found whenever a person chooses to tell the truth when lying would be easier. It is found whenever an individual decides to work hard to master a skill so they can use it to help their community. You do not need a dark cape or millions of dollars to be a force for good in your own world. You only need the courage to face your own fears, the discipline to hold onto your principles when life gets hard, and the absolute commitment to leave the world a little brighter and safer than you found it. When we look back at the long journey of the Dark Guardian, we realize that his true war was never really fought against individual criminals or corrupt leaders. His true war was always fought for the very soul of the city and the heart of every person living within its borders. A city is not just a collection of cold stone buildings, tall glass towers, and busy paved streets. A city is a living, breathing organism formed by the combined thoughts, choices, and actions of all its citizens. When corruption, fear, and poverty take root in the soil of a community, the people begin to lose faith in justice and goodness. They start to believe that looking out for oneself at the expense of others is the only way to survive in a harsh world. This quiet loss of hope is far more dangerous than any single crime, because it slowly poisons the entire collective mind of the population. The Dark Hero understands this subtle truth better than anyone else, which is why every action he takes is designed to restore that lost faith and prove that goodness is worth fighting for. To maintain his stance in this perpetual battle, he must constantly engage in a process of profound mental renewal. Day after day, he confronts the absolute worst aspects of human behavior, witnessing betrayal, cruelty, and mindless greed. It would be remarkably easy for a person in his position to grow bitter and come to despise the very people he has sworn to protect. He could easily adopt a cold mindset that views regular citizens as weak, helpless, or deserving of their misery. But he actively fights against this dangerous mental trap every single morning. He forces himself to remember that the dark actions of a few destructive individuals do not define the true nature of humanity. He looks for quiet examples of everyday courage, such as a doctor working late hours to heal the sick, a teacher spending extra time with a struggling student, or an honest police officer refusing a tempting bribe. By focusing his attention on these small, quiet acts of virtue, he keeps his own moral compass balanced and keeps his heart open to genuine compassion. This continuous mental effort highlights the incredible importance of self-awareness and emotional regulation in a life dedicated to high principles. Most people allow their mood, environment, and immediate surroundings to dictate how they feel and how they treat others. If they spend their day around negative and angry people, they tend to become negative and angry themselves. The Dark Hero demonstrates a radically different way of living, showing that an individual can remain calm, moral, and focused even when surrounded by total chaos. He practices a form of mental filtering, carefully observing the negative energy around him without allowing it to enter his inner self. He treats his mind as a sacred fortress that must be protected from the corrosive influence of hatred and despair. This practice of internal sovereignty allows him to move through the dirtiest corners of the city without ever allowing the dirt to stain his soul. We must also examine the profound concept of purpose and how it transforms human suffering into an infinite source of strength. When the young boy lost his parents in that dark alley, his immediate world was completely shattered, leaving him with an immense void filled with pain and confusion. Many people who experience severe trauma spend the rest of their lives wandering through that void, looking for ways to distract themselves or numb the pain. They seek relief in temporary pleasures, material wealth, or deep isolation, but none of these things can ever heal a wounded heart. The Dark Hero took a completely different approach by filling his void with a massive, lifelong purpose. He realized that while he could not undo the tragic past, he could use his remaining time on Earth to prevent similar tragedies from happening to others. This singular purpose gave his life immediate direction, clarity, and meaning, turning his private grief into a public shield. The way he approaches personal responsibility is another crucial lesson for anyone seeking to master their own life. In modern society, it is very common for people to blame their bad behavior, poor choices, or lack of success on their upbringing, their environment, or the unfair actions of others. While it is true that we cannot control where we come from or what happens to us in our early years, we are entirely responsible for how we choose to live today. The Dark Hero could have easily blamed his tragic past for becoming a bitter or selfish man, and society would have understood his pain. Instead, he took absolute, uncompromising responsibility for his own growth, his own actions, and his own moral choices. He never makes excuses for himself, nor does he expect others to solve his problems for him. He proves that a human being has the incredible ability to take full ownership of their life and build a heroic character out of the most difficult circumstances. Furthermore, his crusade offers a powerful meditation on the true nature of victory and success. In a world that measures success by fame, applause, material wealth, and easy comfort, his life looks like an endless series of painful sacrifices. He works in total secrecy, receives no public praise, lives in quiet isolation, and endures constant physical pain. Yet when evaluated through a deeper moral lens, his life represents the ultimate form of human success. He lives in absolute harmony with his highest values, protects countless innocent lives, and keeps a sacred promise made long ago. He demonstrates that real success is not about what you acquire from the world, but about what you give back to the world through your effort, integrity, and sacrifice. He shows us that a life lived with true purpose and unwavering discipline is far more fulfilling than a life of empty comfort and shallow pleasure. The relationship between the guardian and the passage of time reveals a profound commitment to sustainable effort over quick victories. Many people start grand projects or life changes with immense enthusiasm, only to give up after a few weeks or months when the initial excitement fades. The dark hero understands that saving a city or building a meaningful life is not a short sprint, but an exhausting marathon that spans decades. He paces his mental and physical energy with extreme care, ensuring that he can show up night after night regardless of weather, injury, or emotional fatigue. He avoids burning out by maintaining a strict, unyielding routine that keeps his energy focused where it is needed most. This ability to sustain high effort over a lifetime is a rare and powerful human quality that transforms simple ambition into lasting historical impact. We can also learn a vital lesson from how he manages his internal fear when facing unknown dangers. Fear is an incredible force that can paralyze even the strongest minds, causing people to shrink away from opportunities and abandon their dreams. The dark hero does not possess a special immunity to fear, nor does he pretend that danger does not exist. Instead, he treats fear as simple biological data that alerts him to potential hazards in his environment. When he feels fear rising in his chest, he uses deliberate breathing techniques and razor-sharp logic to process the emotion instantly. He converts the nervous energy of fear into heightened awareness and faster reaction times. By refusing to let fear control his decisions, he demonstrates that a person can feel afraid and still act with decisive courage. As the long story of the Dark Guardian draws to its natural conclusion, we are left with a timeless message of personal hope and empowerment. His life stands as a living proof that no night is so dark that a single light cannot pierce through it, and no situation is so hopeless that a dedicated human heart cannot make a difference. He reminds us that the greatest battles we will ever fight are not fought on distant battlefields with heavy weapons, but inside our own minds every single day. We fight those battles whenever we choose kindness over anger, honesty over deception, discipline over laziness, and courage over fear. His legacy is an open invitation to every listener to step up, take responsibility for their own life, and become a quiet guardian of truth and justice in their own unique way. The dark mask and the cold cave are merely physical symbols, but the spirit of unwavering commitment, moral integrity, and selfless service lives within the reach of every human being who dares to choose the path of light. When we look at the wider world beyond the rainy streets of his home city, we see the mortal guardian stepping into an even larger arena alongside beings of incredible power. Some of these allies can fly through the sky at unimaginable speeds, pull massive ships out of the ocean with their bare hands, or command cosmic energies that can destroy entire planets. In the presence of such supernatural strength, an ordinary human being could easily feel completely insignificant, helpless, or obsolete. Yet the dark hero walks among these godlike figures not as a follower, but as a respected leader and an equal partner. He proves that raw physical power and cosmic gifts are ultimately inferior to a disciplined human mind that possesses total preparation, razor-sharp strategy, and an unbreakable will. He shows the entire universe that a simple mortal man, armed only with intelligence, heavy armor, and a clear moral vision, can hold his ground against the most terrifying cosmic threats imaginable. His standing among these powerful beings comes from his absolute mastery of tactical planning and emotional control. While others rely heavily on their natural gifts, he relies on relentless study and deep observation. He carefully analyzes every single individual he encounters, documenting their physical limits, psychological habits, and emotional vulnerabilities. He builds specialized armor and high-tech tools capable of counteracting incredible forces, ensuring that he is never caught unprepared in a crisis. When cosmic monsters or powerful invaders arrive to threaten the planet, he does not panic or hesitate. He steps directly into the command center, coordinating grand strategies and analyzing enemy patterns while others fight on the front lines. His calm presence and sharp mind provide a solid anchor for his allies, demonstrating that pure human intellect and strategic foresight are the ultimate equalizer in a world of dangerous chaos. We must also examine the profound psychological power of his complete anonymity and the myth he has created around his identity. To the general public and the criminal underworld, he is not a specific human being with a birth name, a family history, or personal vulnerabilities. He is simply the creature of the night, a silent phantom that appears out of nowhere to enforce justice and protect the innocent. By hiding his human face completely beneath the dark cowl, he elevates his mission far beyond the personal story of one wealthy man. He becomes a universal symbol that belongs to every single citizen who longs for safety and fairness. Anyone looking up at the dark silhouette on a rainy rooftop can imagine that the figure represents pure human potential, unyielding courage, and absolute commitment to what is right. This intentional distance from personal fame ensures that the legend can never be tarnished by normal human flaws or political scandals, allowing the symbol to remain pure and powerful across generations. This complete commitment to the myth requires a quiet personal sacrifice that few people could ever comprehend. He must constantly endure the emotional pain of being misunderstood by the very people he fights to save. When the public criticizes his dark methods or the news media portrays him as a dangerous menace, he cannot step forward to defend his reputation or explain his noble motives. He accepts the public misunderstanding in silence, understanding that his personal reputation is completely meaningless compared to the success of his mission. He willingly plays the role of the solitary outsider, bearing the weight of public suspicion so that the city can remain safe. This willingness to be hated for doing the right thing represents one of the highest forms of moral courage, showing us that true virtue does not seek public praise, applause, or validation. The emotional atmosphere inside his hidden subterranean cave reflects this profound sense of quiet dedication. Late at night, after the long patrols are finished and the city slowly begins to wake up, he sits alone in the cold stone space, surrounded by humming computer screens and dark shadow. His body is covered in fresh bruises, his muscles ache from severe physical exertion, and his mind carries the quiet weight of everything he has witnessed in the dark streets. In those silent moments, there are no cheering crowds, no medals, and no awards waiting for him. There is only the steady drip of underground water and the quiet hum of high-tech machinery. Yet inside his heart, he experiences a deep and peaceful satisfaction that money can never buy. He knows that because he stood guard in the freezing rain, a child slept safely in their bed, a store owner opened their shop without fear, and a family remained unbroken. This quiet knowledge is the only reward he seeks, proving that genuine fulfillment comes from knowing that your hard work made the world a little safer for someone else. His continuous victory over internal burnout offers a vital framework for anyone facing long-term difficulties in their own life. Living a life of severe discipline, constant physical pain, and emotional isolation could easily lead a person into deep exhaustion, bitterness, or total despair. Many people who attempt ambitious goals eventually collapse under the weight of their own high expectations, giving up when the work becomes repetitive and exhausting. The dark hero avoids this common trap by anchoring his daily efforts to an unshakable core of deep purpose rather than temporary motivation. He does not rely on emotional excitement to fuel his actions, because he knows that feelings come and go like the wind. Instead, he treats his mission as a sacred daily duty that must be fulfilled regardless of how tired, sore, or emotionally drained he feels. This steady, non-emotional approach to work transforms potential burnout into a continuous stream of reliable action, showing us how to sustain high performance across decades of hard labor. Furthermore, his relationship with the concept of hope is deeply realistic and practical. He does not engage in foolish optimism, nor does he pretend that bad things will magically fix themselves if people just wait patiently. He views hope as something that must be actively generated through hard physical work, strategic planning, and personal sacrifice. When he sees a neighborhood falling into total corruption, he does not sit around wishing for better days. He steps into the dark street, catches the criminals, exposes the corrupt officials, and creates the physical safety necessary for hope to grow. He demonstrates that real hope is not a passive feeling, but an active force that is built piece by piece through human effort. He teaches the citizens of his city that if they want a clean, safe, and just community, they must find the courage to stand up and build it with their own hands. When we reflect on the entire span of his extraordinary life, we realize that the dark hero provides a timeless roadmap for human self-transformation. He shows us that we are not helpless leaves blown around by the chaotic winds of fate, but active creators of our own character and destiny. He proves that a human being can take the most devastating personal loss, the deepest childhood fear, and the most hostile environment, and convert those negative elements into an indestructible fortress of purpose, strength, and compassion. He reminds us that true power does not come from magic spells, supernatural gifts, or massive wealth, but from the quiet decision to master our own minds, hold tightly to our moral boundaries, and use our limited time on earth to protect and serve others. As this audio exploration of his deep philosophy comes to its final conclusion, let his story remain in your mind as a powerful reminder of what a disciplined human spirit can achieve. Whenever you face a difficult challenge in your own life, whenever you feel overwhelmed by unexpected hardship, or whenever you are tempted to compromise your core values for easy comfort, remember the solitary figure standing on the rainy rooftop in the dark. Remember that you possess the exact same human potential to control your reactions, master your fears, and choose decency over anger. You do not need a dark cape or a secret cave to make a profound difference in the world around you. You only need the quiet courage to face your own shadows, the discipline to stand by your principles when life gets hard, and the unyielding determination to be a steady light for others in times of dark uncertainty. To understand the true depth of his lifelong crusade, we must look at how he views the city itself over decades of constant struggle. The city is not merely a background setting of stone and glass, but a living, breathing furnace that tests the moral strength of every single person who walks its streets. It is an environment where corruption naturally grows if good people do nothing, constantly pressing down on the weak and pushing the desperate toward bad choices. Many reformers come into such a place with grand speeches and quick plans, believing they can fix everything in a few short years. When those quick plans inevitably fail against the deep walls of systemic decay, those reformers usually grow tired, lose their faith, and walk away to live easier lives elsewhere. The Dark Guardian operates on a completely different timeline. He understands from the very beginning that cleaning up a broken community is not a single battle that can be won quickly, but a quiet war of attrition that lasts an entire lifetime. He does not demand immediate victory, nor does he expect the city to magically transform overnight. He simply commits to standing in the breach every single day, refusing to let the darkness win another inch of ground. This endless view of the struggle changes how he processes disappointment and personal failure. In a long crusade that spans decades, mistakes are completely inevitable regardless of how carefully a person plans. A door locked a second too late, a subtle clue missed in a rush, or an unexpected trap set by a clever enemy can result in terrible outcomes and loss of innocent life. When a normal person faces such devastating miscalculations, the weight of guilt can easily paralyze their mind, causing them to quit out of shame or self-doubt. The dark hero handles failure with the same cold analytical rigor that he applies to solving complex crime scenes. He does not waste precious energy wallowing in self-pity, nor does he make excuses to protect his pride. He examines his own mistakes with total honesty, identifies the exact moment where his strategy broke down, and adjusts his training and equipment so that specific error can never happen again. He treats every failure not as a reason to give up, but as vital information that makes his future preparation even more effective. Another vital aspect of his mindset is his deep understanding of mercy and its relationship to true justice. Some people mistakenly believe that his strict refusal to take life comes from a soft or gentle nature. In reality, his restraint is born from a profound understanding of human fragility and the absolute finality of violence. He recognizes that taking a life requires only a second of anger and a single terrible choice, but building a human life takes decades of growth, love, and effort. When he disarms a violent criminal without ending their life, he is holding open a tiny door for potential redemption, no matter how small or unlikely that redemption might seem. He leaves the final judgment to the community and the law, refusing to play the role of an absolute God who decides whose story is finished. This quiet respect for the possibility of human change keeps his work grounded in genuine compassion rather than cold superiority. He fights to stop the harm today while preserving the fragile chance for a better tomorrow. The physical and mental maintenance required to sustain this level of readiness over decades demands an extraordinary relationship with time and habit. He does not view his nightly patrols as an extraordinary event, but as a standard necessity of his daily existence, much like eating or sleeping. Every hour of his daytime routine is structured to support his night operations. He studies weather patterns, monitors emergency communication channels, reviews financial transactions of suspicious organizations, and continuously updates his tactical knowledge. His entire life becomes a seamless stream of focused preparation, where nothing is wasted on empty distractions. When people look at his achievements, they often see only the dramatic moments on the rainy rooftops, forgetting the thousands of quiet hours spent in silent study and physical conditioning. He teaches us that real greatness is not built in rare moments of high drama, but in the quiet, unglamorous choices made every single day when nobody is watching. We must also explore how he maintains his internal peace while carrying such an overwhelming weight of suffering. A person who spends every night dealing with violent crime, tragic loss, and human cruelty could easily lose their mind to constant anger or numbness. To protect his core humanity, he cultivates a quiet internal sanctuary built on gratitude for small victories. When he successfully stops a robbery, locates a missing person, or prevents a dangerous accident, he allows himself to feel a quiet sense of fulfillment. He does not need grand celebrations or public recognition to feel that his time was well spent. Saving a single family, protecting a small neighborhood for one night, or giving a scared child a sense of security is more than enough to justify all his physical pain and sacrifice. By focusing on the immediate practical good he achieves rather than the overwhelming total amount of evil in the world, he keeps his spirit grounded, calm, and ready for the next challenge. The relationship between the Dark Guardian and the regular working people of his city is built on a quiet mutual understanding that grows stronger over time. He does not seek to be worshipped as a savior, nor does he want the citizens to become dependent on his presence. He wants his actions to serve as a constant reminder that regular people have power and that bad actions will always face consequences. When an honest business owner sees the dark symbol in the sky, they know they are not completely alone in their fight against extortion. When a young police officer hesitates before taking a bribe, remembering the quiet watcher in the shadows gives them the extra courage to make the right choice. His presence acts as a powerful moral stabilizer across the entire community, raising the baseline of courage and integrity for everyone. He proves that one person standing firmly for what is right can create a protective umbrella under which an entire society can slowly gather the strength to heal itself. We can learn much from his approach to mental fatigue and the constant temptation to seek comfort. In the modern world, individuals are constantly surrounded by easy distractions designed to numb uncomfortable emotions and escape from difficult work. The Dark Guardian deliberately rejects this cycle of escape and distraction, choosing instead to remain fully present in his discomfort and responsibility. When he feels tired or mentally drained, he does not seek refuge in mindless entertainment or shallow luxury. Instead, he engages in active recovery, using quiet meditation, light physical movement, and deep reflection to restore his clarity. He treats his mind like a high-precision engine that requires clean fuel, regular maintenance, and constant protection from toxic influences. By mastering the art of mental recovery, he maintains peak psychological resilience across decades of brutal labor. His ultimate legacy is the absolute proof that human beings possess an unlimited capacity to transform personal pain into a constructive force. The city tried to break his spirit in a dark alley when he was a small child, but he responded by building an indestructible shield to protect others. The corrupt environment tried to convince him that everyone is naturally selfish and cruel, but he responded by living a life of radical selflessness and ironclad morality. The chaotic villains tried to drive him into anger and revenge, but he responded with cold logic, extreme discipline, and unyielding mercy. He stands as a quiet beacon of human potential, proving that no matter how cold or dark our environment may become, we always hold the ultimate power to choose our own path, hold on to our highest principles, and bring light into the darkest corners of the world. The ability to sit alone in a dark, quiet room without feeling the urge to escape into easy distractions is one of the rarest human qualities in the modern world. Most people feel deeply uncomfortable when they are left entirely alone with their own thoughts, because silence forces a person to face their hidden insecurities, unresolved fears, and painful memories. The Dark Hero has turned solitude from a cold prison into a powerful fortress of self-discovery and mental clarity. Spending thousands of hours deep beneath the earth in a damp stone room, surrounded only by the quiet dripping of water and the hum of monitors, he has learned to embrace total silence. In that deep quiet, away from the loud demands of society and the superficial noise of public life, he examines his thoughts with absolute honesty. He clears away the clutter of emotional impulse, sorting through his experiences and sharpening his focus until his mind reaches a state of total stillness. Solitude becomes his primary tool for mental recovery, allowing him to restore his inner balance after long nights spent facing violent chaos. There is a profound difference between suppressing human emotions and truly mastering them. Suppressing emotion means pushing pain, anger, or fear down into the dark corners of the mind, pretending those feelings do not exist. When a person suppresses their feelings, those buried emotions slowly build up like steam in a closed pipe until they eventually explode in destructive ways. The Dark Hero does not suppress his emotions or pretend that he feels no pain. When he experiences grief over a lost friend or anger at a cruel act, he allows himself to recognize the feeling completely. He acknowledges the pain, understands where it comes from, and then consciously decides how to channel that emotional energy into constructive action. He uses anger not as a wild flame that burns everything in sight, but as a controlled fuel that drives his intense training and sharpens his focus. By developing this high level of emotional awareness, he prevents his feelings from controlling his decisions, ensuring that every action he takes in the field is guided by clear logic and moral purpose. When we examine how he maintains his extraordinary performance across decades of continuous danger, we see that he relies on a carefully constructed system of daily habits rather than temporary motivation. Motivation is an unpredictable emotion that comes and goes depending on physical energy, sleep, weather, and social approval. A person who relies solely on motivation will work hard when they feel excited, but will quickly slow down when they feel tired, cold, or discouraged. The dark hero understands that relying on motivation is a fatal mistake in a long war against corruption. Instead, he builds an unyielding framework of daily rituals that execute automatically regardless of how he feels. Every morning begins with the exact same sequence of physical conditioning, study, equipment inspection, and tactical review. By turning his essential duties into automatic habits, he eliminates the need to make difficult choices about whether he feels like working. His habits carry him forward effortlessly through moments of extreme fatigue and grief, ensuring that the protective shield over his city never drops for a single day. In the quiet solitude of his hidden sanctuary, he continuously studies the nature of human fear and how it influences human behavior. Most individuals view fear as a purely negative emotion that should be avoided at all costs. When fear appears, people often run away, freeze in place, or act out in sudden anger. The dark hero treats fear as a neutral diagnostic tool that provides vital information about his environment and his own internal limits. When he feels a sudden surge of fear during a dangerous situation, he does not panic or try to force the feeling away. He recognizes that fear is simply his body preparing for action by releasing chemical energy and sharpening his senses. He uses deep breathing techniques to slow his heart rate, keeping his mind rational while utilizing the physical energy boost provided by the fear response. By transforming fear from an emotional barrier into an analytical sensor, he gains a massive tactical advantage over his enemies, who are often blinded and paralyzed by their own unexamined panic. Despite having access to unimaginable wealth and vast corporate resources, his personal lifestyle inside his private spaces is remarkably simple and minimalist. He owns no unnecessary luxuries in his subterranean base, keeping only the precise tools, books, and medical supplies required for his mission. This intentional simplicity is not just a matter of physical convenience, but a deep psychological strategy. He understands that filling an environment with excessive physical possessions creates mental clutter and unnecessary distractions. Every item in his space has a clear purpose, and every tool is kept in its exact place so it can be retrieved instantly in a crisis. By maintaining a clean and uncluttered physical environment, he creates a quiet mental space where his mind can operate with maximum efficiency. He teaches us that true luxury is not found in collecting material things, but in possessing total control over our own attention and living a life free from shallow distractions. A truly disciplined mind never assumes that it knows everything or that its past training is sufficient for future challenges. The dark hero approaches every new day with the quiet humility of a lifelong student. Even after decades of continuous operational success, he constantly seeks out new knowledge, learning new scientific techniques, studying emerging technologies, and analyzing evolving criminal methods. When he encounters an enemy who uses a strategy he has never seen before, he does not get defensive or double down on outdated tactics. He steps back, studies the new threat with intense curiosity, and adapts his approach to overcome the challenge. He recognizes that rigidity leads to failure, and that survival in a changing world requires endless adaptability. By pairing his firm moral values with a flexible and open mind, he remains effective across changing times, proving that true intellectual strength lies in our willingness to learn and adapt throughout our lives. In a world where people are constantly talking, shouting, and demanding public attention, the dark hero practices the lost art of quiet observation. He spends far more time listening and watching than he does speaking. When he steps into a room, he does not try to dominate the space with loud words or aggressive postures. He fades into the shadows, quietly observing the body language, speech patterns, and subtle interactions of everyone present. He notices the small details that others miss, such as a slight tremor in a hand, a nervous shift in eye contact, or a misplaced object on a desk. This practice of quiet observation allows him to gather vital information, anticipate potential dangers, and understand the true motives of those around him before making a single move. He shows us that real influence comes from deep understanding rather than loud noise, and that silence is often the most powerful position in any room. The daily reality of his life involves constant encounters with physical pain, ranging from minor bruises and deep cuts to broken bones and severe muscle exhaustion. Most human beings spend their entire lives trying to avoid physical discomfort, viewing pain as a terrible enemy that must be eliminated immediately with medication or rest. The dark hero has developed a unique psychological relationship with physical discomfort, treating pain as simple neurological feedback rather than a reason to stop working. He learns to separate the physical sensation of pain from his emotional response to it. He acknowledges that his body is sending a warning signal, assesses whether the injury is life-threatening, and then consciously chooses to keep moving forward despite the discomfort. This mental ability to process pain without allowing it to cause panic or slow his progress allows him to achieve extraordinary physical feats during critical moments when others would collapse. When we look closely at the architecture of his life, we see that the true core of his power is not his physical strength, his vast wealth, or his advanced technology. The true core of his power is his total personal integrity. Integrity means living in complete alignment with your stated principles, making sure that your private choices match your public promises even when nobody is looking. The dark hero never makes exceptions for himself, nor does he break his core rules when things get difficult or dangerous. He holds himself to a far higher standard than he expects from anyone else, taking full responsibility for his errors and refusing to justify questionable behavior for temporary gains. This absolute consistency builds an unshakable foundation of self-trust within his own mind. Because he knows that he will never compromise his values, he operates with total confidence and clarity in the darkest situations imaginable. The ultimate evolution of his mind occurs when he shifts his primary motivation from personal grief to universal compassion. In the early days of his crusade, his actions were driven largely by the intense pain of his childhood loss and the burning desire to prevent a similar tragedy. As he matures through decades of service, that narrow focus expands into a deep and genuine love for all human life. He realizes that every person walking the streets of his city carries their own hidden burdens, private heartbreaks, and quiet struggles. He no longer fights simply out of a promise made to the memory of his parents, but out of a profound empathy for the vulnerable, the afraid, and the hopeless. His crusade becomes a continuous act of quiet service, demonstrating that the highest form of human achievement is taking our own personal pain and converting it into an endless source of compassion, protection, and hope for others. When we examine the visual image he creates in the mind of the public, we see a very deliberate dual strategy that serves two completely different audiences at the same time. To the violent criminal lurking in a dark alleyway, he presents himself as an unnatural nightmare, a shadowy phantom with pointed ears and a flowing cape that appears out of nowhere without making a sound. He wants the lawbreaker to feel an immediate surge of paralyzing fear, causing their heart to race and their hands to drop their weapons before a single blow is even struck. He uses the deep, dark atmosphere of the night, the heavy fog rolling off the harbor, and the dramatic silhouetted shapes on high rooftops to create a psychological trap for the wicked. But when he turns around to face a scared child shivering in the corner of a crime scene, or an elderly shopkeeper who has lost everything to a local protection ring, his demeanor transforms instantly into one of calm and gentle reassurance. He steps out of the shadows, lowers his intimidating posture, and speaks in a quiet voice that lets the victim know the danger has passed. He demonstrates that fear is a surgical instrument to be applied exclusively to those who inflict pain on others, while gentleness and warmth are reserved for those who need protection. This sharp contrast ensures that he never becomes a source of dread for the honest working people of his city. In a modern age dominated by automated systems, artificial intelligence, and incredible technological machines, it would be easy for a wealthy crusader to rely entirely on computers to make decisions for him. His hidden base is filled with the most powerful processing equipment on the planet, capable of analyzing millions of data points, predicting crime patterns, and tracking movements across the entire globe in real time. Yet despite having access to these incredible automated tools, he never allows a machine to make the final choice when a human life or a moral decision is at stake. He treats high technology strictly as an auxiliary assistant that gathers raw data, leaving the vital work of interpretation, empathy, and ethical judgment entirely to his own trained mind. He understands that a computer algorithm operates strictly on cold numbers and cold probability, completely lacking the capacity for moral nuance, mercy, or deep human understanding. A machine might calculate that collateral damage is acceptable to capture a dangerous target, but a true protector knows that every single innocent life is priceless and cannot be traded away for tactical efficiency. By keeping his own human judgment firmly at the center of every operation, he ensures that his crusade remains guided by genuine morality rather than cold mechanical calculations. The concept of eternal vigilance is often discussed in political speeches and philosophical books as an abstract idea, but for the Dark Hero, vigilance is a literal physical and mental state of being that occupies every hour of his life. While the vast majority of the population sleeps peacefully in warm beds, completely unaware of the constant threats moving through the dark streets, he sits high above the city on a cold stone gargoyle, watching the horizon with unblinking focus. He does not view vigilance as a temporary chore that finishes when a specific shift ends, but as a continuous awareness that must be maintained as long as corruption exists. This constant state of alertness requires him to train his senses to notice tiny anomalies that normal people completely overlook. He notices a sudden change in the engine sound of a passing car, a faint flick of a curtain in an empty building, or a subtle change in the shadow patterns along a brick wall. He teaches us that being a protector requires more than just physical strength, requiring an active and engaged mind that refuses to fall asleep at the desk while important values are being eroded around us. The distinction between temporary personal revenge and sustainable long-term justice is one of the most vital lessons his entire life provides for society. Revenge is an emotional impulse born out of personal hurt, pride, and the destructive desire to inflict equal or greater suffering on someone who caused pain. When a person acts out of revenge, they are focused entirely on the past event, allowing anger to burn up their own peace of mind and turn them into a bitter individual. Revenge never heals a wound, nor does it make a broken world better. It simply creates a dangerous cycle of violence that continues to escalate until everyone involved is destroyed. Justice, on the other hand, is a forward-looking strategy designed to protect the future, restore balance to a community, and hold individuals accountable through fair and consistent rules. When the Dark Hero captures a dangerous criminal, he does not torture them out of personal anger, nor does he take satisfaction in physical defeat. He delivers them to the proper authorities so they can be held by the law, focusing energy on making the streets safer for tomorrow rather than settling a personal score from yesterday. He shows us that true strength is found in putting aside private desires for payback, so we can build a world where rules apply to everyone equally. Every human being encounters severe storms in personal life, times when financial failure, medical illness, or the loss of a loved one threatens to wash away everything built over years. In those overwhelming moments of personal crisis, people are often tempted to abandon daily discipline, drop ethical standards, or lash out at the world because they feel that life has treated them unfairly. The story of the Dark Hero serves as a powerful reminder that principles matter most when conditions are at their absolute worst. It is very easy to be honest, kind, and disciplined when the sun is shining, money is flowing, and everyone is treating us with respect. The real test of human character occurs when we are cold, tired, bleeding, and facing total failure in the dark. By standing firmly by core rules through the loss of family, the destruction of home, and the betrayal of close friends, he proves that a dedicated human spirit can remain unshakable in the middle of any storm. He inspires us to hold onto values tightest when the wind is blowing hardest, showing that moral choices define who we are far more than external circumstances ever can. As time continues its quiet march forward, the physical relationship between the Guardian and the mission undergoes a slow and painful evolution. The joints grow stiff, reaction times slow by microscopic fractions of a second, and the body requires more time to recover from brutal physical confrontations. Instead of denying this reality or turning to dangerous shortcuts to maintain physical youth, he adapts his tactical approach to match his changing body. He relies more heavily on long-range strategic planning, advanced defensive tools, and subtle psychological manipulation, allowing vast experience and sharp intellect to compensate for declining physical speed. He demonstrates a profound maturity by accepting the natural limits of human biology without letting those limits stop essential work. He teaches us that growing older does not mean becoming useless or helpless, but simply means shifting focus from raw physical force to deep wisdom, careful mentorship, and strategic leadership. He shows us how to age with dignity, using the hard-earned lessons of the past to guide the young warriors who step up to carry the torch into the future. One of the greatest psychological traps that ambitious and disciplined people fall into is the illusion that they can achieve complete control over every variable in their environment. A person who works exceptionally hard often begins to believe that if they just plan carefully enough, study hard enough, and train long enough, nothing will ever go wrong. When an unexpected tragedy or random accident occurs despite all careful preparation, these individuals often suffer a total mental collapse because their worldview cannot account for chaos. The dark hero understands that complete control over the external world is a total illusion that can never be achieved by any mortal being. No matter how many high-tech computers are built or how many tactical plans are written, a person cannot stop every random event, control the weather, or predict the sudden madness of an unpredictable enemy. He prepares with extreme care while remaining completely realistic about limits, understanding that the job is not to control the world, but to manage the personal response to whatever chaos the world throws forward. This balanced perspective prevents him from falling into despair when things go wrong, allowing him to adapt swiftly to changing realities without losing mental balance. Although the crusade began as a solitary mission driven by private grief, the slow growth of the extended team reveals a vital truth about human limitations and community. No matter how brilliant, strong, or determined an individual may be, a single person can never carry the full weight of a decaying society alone. Attempting to do everything alone leads directly to physical breakdown, emotional burnout, and severe narrowness of vision. By opening life to loyal allies, honest police officers, and brilliant young partners, he creates a resilient network capable of covering weaknesses and protecting different parts of the community simultaneously. He learns to trust others with critical tasks, allowing partners to make their own decisions and contribute unique talents to the shared goal. This evolution from an isolated vigilante into the central leader of a dedicated team shows us that true strength involves recognizing when help is needed, building strong partnerships, and sharing the heavy burdens of life with people who share identical values. Every morning when the sun begins to rise over the tall buildings of the city, the dark hero cleans armor, reviews the events of the previous night, and prepares for the day ahead. He knows that no matter how many crimes were stopped or how many lives were saved during the dark hours, the city will face new challenges when the sun goes down again. He does not allow past successes to create complacency, nor does he allow past failures to paralyze momentum. He approaches every new day as a completely fresh start where past reputation counts for nothing and dedication must be proven all over again through real action. This mindset of continuous daily restart is a vital concept for anyone striving for long-term excellence in any field. Success is not a permanent state achieved once and kept forever, but a daily standard that must be earned through consistent effort every single morning. By letting go of the pride of yesterday and the regret of yesterday, he maintains a clean and sharp focus on the present moment, ensuring that absolute best effort is given to the work right in front of him. In the final analysis, the story of this dark guardian reaches far beyond the boundaries of an entertaining tale, offering a practical blueprint for living a meaningful, disciplined, and courageous life in a complex world. He proves to every listener that magic powers, alien biology, or supernatural gifts are not required to make a profound difference in the world. A person only needs a mind that refuses to surrender to easy comfort, a heart that cares deeply about the well-being of others, and an unyielding commitment to hold onto core principles when life gets difficult. When facing dark alleys, difficult personal losses, or scary choices, remember the quiet lesson of the bat. Remember that inside the human mind lies the power to master fear, take control of actions, and choose to be a steady light for those around. The cowl and the cape are merely theater, but the commitment to stand up in the dark, protect the weak, and fight for justice is a real human choice that belongs to anyone brave enough to make it. When we study the way he moves through the complex physical layout of his city, we see a mind that views every building, bridge, and alleyway as part of a single interconnected system. He does not see stone walls and steel frames as simple obstacles, but as structural pathways that can be understood, navigated, and used to protect human life. He spends thousands of hours studying the blueprint maps of old subway tunnels, abandoned factories, and high-rise towers, learning every hidden corridor and forgotten emergency exit across the entire urban landscape. This deep spatial awareness allows him to move through dangerous environments with complete confidence, appearing and disappearing before his enemies even realize where he came from. He teaches us that mastery over any domain requires a deep technical understanding of the environment, showing that a person who takes time to study the surrounding structure can turn any hostile situation into a navigable space. The temptation to take absolute control over a broken system is one of the subtle psychological dangers that every powerful leader must face. When a person possesses vast wealth, advanced technology, and superior tactical knowledge in a city full of corruption, it would be remarkably easy to decide that democracy has failed and that direct rule is necessary. He could easily use his private security networks, high-tech surveillance tools, and physical force to seize control of the local government, removing corrupt officials by force and imposing strict order on the entire population. Many powerful figures throughout history started with noble intentions, but eventually surrendered to the dangerous belief that their personal vision was so superior that they had a right to rule others as a dictator. The dark hero continuously rejects this subtle temptation, recognizing that imposing order through force destroys the very freedom and human dignity he is fighting to protect. He chooses to remain a hidden servant of the public good rather than a visible ruler, leaving the governance of the community to the citizens themselves. His approach to physical combat reveals a deep technical precision that prioritizes control over destruction. When he engages a group of violent attackers in a dark street, he does not throw wild punches or allow personal anger to dictate his movements. Every strike, block, and movement is calculated to neutralize the threat with the exact amount of force required, avoiding unnecessary harm or permanent injury. He uses his understanding of human anatomy, leverage, and momentum to disarm attackers, break their balance, and immobilize them quickly. He views physical violence strictly as a medical intervention designed to stop ongoing harm, rather than an opportunity to inflict punishment or express personal rage. By maintaining total tactical discipline during intense physical confrontations, he proves that true strength lies in precision, restraint, and complete emotional control. The process of physical recovery after severe injuries offers a powerful window into his extraordinary mental endurance. Over decades of dangerous operational work, his body suffers numerous broken bones, torn muscles, deep cuts, and severe concussions. When a normal person faces a major physical injury, the pain and temporary loss of mobility often lead to deep depression, anxiety, and a feeling of total helplessness. The Dark Hero treats the recovery process as another vital mission that requires identical discipline, patience, and hard work. He follows strict medical routines, engages in painful physical therapy exercises, and adapts his mental study while his body heals in quiet isolation. He does not allow physical limitations to break his spirit, using time off the streets to refine tactical strategies and update computer systems. He shows us that when body or external circumstances limit physical action, a person can still maintain progress by focusing energy on mental growth and strategic preparation. The contrast between destructive personal ego and humble selfless duty is a constant theme throughout his entire life. In a world where individuals constantly seek fame, public attention, and personal credit for every small achievement, he operates in complete darkness without expecting any recognition. He allows others to take credit for his discoveries, leaves captured criminals for the police to claim, and remains silent when the public misinterprets his actions. He understands that personal ego is a dangerous weakness that creates blind spots, breeds arrogance, and distracts from core objectives. By completely removing his personal ego from the mission, he gains immense mental freedom and total focus. He does not care what people think about his personal character, caring only whether the innocent remain safe and justice is served. He demonstrates that real accomplishment is quiet, self-contained, and completely independent of public applause. We can also learn much from his deep commitment to small, overlooked human lives that society often forgets. While major news headlines focus on grand political events, high-profile crimes, and famous individuals, the Dark Hero pays equal attention to the quiet struggles of regular working citizens. He spends time tracking down minor thieves who steal from small family businesses, locating missing teenagers who have run away from home, and protecting vulnerable elderly citizens in quiet neighborhoods. He does not judge the importance of an intervention by its fame or public dramatic value, treating every single human life as infinitely valuable. This total commitment to ordinary people shows that true moral greatness is measured by how a guardian treats the most vulnerable and forgotten members of a community. The psychological blueprint for confronting personal fear involves turning inward to examine the source of internal terror, rather than running away from uncomfortable feelings. Most people spend immense energy trying to avoid memories of past pain, hiding behind distractions, work, or temporary pleasures. The Dark Hero demonstrates that true healing and strength require a person to walk directly into the dark caves of their own mind. He re-examines his childhood trauma, analyzes his deepest fears, and accepts his painful history as an unchangeable part of his story. By facing his internal darkness directly, he removes its power to surprise or paralyze him during critical moments. He proves that when a human being integrates past pain into their daily purpose, that pain transforms from a crippling weight into an indestructible armor of personal resilience. The evolution of his long crusade reflects a profound shift from initial personal grief to universal unconditional compassion. In the early stages of his work, his actions were driven largely by the sharp memory of his lost parents and the burning desire to prevent a similar tragedy. As the years pass and his understanding matures, that narrow focus expands into a broad empathy for all human beings who suffer under injustice. He no longer acts merely out of loyalty to past memories, but out of a deep connection to the living world around him. He fights for the safety of people he will never meet, protecting citizens who may never understand or appreciate his sacrifice. This transition from narrow personal duty to universal service represents the highest development of human character, showing that true love for humanity reaches far beyond personal relationships or private grief. The way a community rebuilds itself under the influence of a quiet moral guardian is a slow and delicate process that spans across generations. When a city has been trapped in corruption and fear for decades, the people gradually lose their ability to imagine a clean and fair world. The appearance of an unyielding guardian who cannot be bought, intimidated, or broken acts as a powerful shock to the collective social mind. Citizens begin to see that courage is possible, that integrity still exists, and that standing up for what is right can produce real results. Small groups of honest police officers, brave judges, dedicated teachers, and concerned parents begin to form networks of support, taking back their neighborhoods piece by piece. The guardian does not fix the city by himself, but acts as a steady pillar around which the community gathers the strength to save itself. In the final consideration of his timeless narrative, the dark hero leaves every listener with an empowering framework for personal action in an uncertain world. He reminds us that every single human being faces choices between easy comfort and difficult duty, between impulsive anger and disciplined restraint, and between bitter despair and persistent hope. His life stands as absolute proof that a person does not need magic powers, perfect circumstances, or public approval to leave a lasting positive mark on the world. You possess the exact same capacity to master your mind, control your reactions, and stand firmly by your core values when conditions are difficult. When you encounter dark alleys in your own life, remember that the dark mask is merely a symbol for the quiet, unyielding courage that lives within every human heart that chooses to protect others, seek truth, and stand up for justice. Every long journey of total dedication eventually encounters the quiet wall of internal doubt. It is relatively easy to maintain high discipline and absolute focus when a person is young, filled with early passion, and driven by the immediate desire to make a difference. But when the years accumulate and the same dark problems reappear under new names, a subtle psychological challenge emerges from within the mind itself. In those quiet moments between operations, when the body is exhausted and the cold rain beats against the high windows, a small voice inside asks whether any of it truly matters. It whispers that the city will always breed new corruption, that human nature is fundamentally flawed, and that one person's lifetime of suffering is merely a drop of water thrown into a burning furnace. The dark hero does not attempt to ignore this internal voice or pretend that the doubt is illegitimate. He confronts the feeling directly, recognizing that doubt is not a sign of weakness, but a natural human reaction to an immense task. He responds to internal doubt not with emotional speeches or false optimism, but with cold, foundational conviction. He reminds himself that his mission was never predicated on achieving a quick, permanent paradise, but on providing a continuous defense for human dignity today. He understands that while evil may be persistent, the refusal to surrender to it is the absolute definition of moral victory. This unwavering internal conviction is put to its harshest test when the world presents tempting Machiavellian shortcuts to solve complex problems. In a city full of dangerous chaos, there are frequent moments when breaking a core moral rule would yield an immediate, clear tactical advantage. Eliminating a dangerous mastermind permanently, or using illegal, tyrannical methods to police a neighborhood could instantly stop ongoing violence and save immense resources. Weak leaders constantly give in to this pragmatic trap, convincing themselves that the noble end justifies any corrupt means. The Dark Guardian rejects this reasoning with uncompromising clarity. He understands that the moment a protector uses the methods of a tyrant, they have already surrendered to the very corruption they claim to fight. A moral boundary is not a flexible line that can be moved whenever conditions become uncomfortable. It is an absolute wall that defines the identity of the protector. By holding his ethical lines tightest when the pressure to break them is highest, he preserves the moral authority of his mission and proves that true justice can never be built on the foundation of tyranny. To maintain this level of ethical and operational precision, he must master the complex cognitive architecture required to manage immense amounts of information without mental breakdown. In the modern operational environment, he is bombarded with an overwhelming stream of incoming data: police radio traffic, satellite feeds, thermal scans, economic reports, and psychological profiles. A normal mind subjected to this continuous flood of stimulation would quickly experience cognitive overload, resulting in paralysis, poor decision-making, and deep mental exhaustion. The Dark Hero practices a rigorous form of cognitive filtering that categorizes information instantly based on immediate relevance and long-term priority. He trains his mind to ignore white noise, focus intensely on critical signals, and make rapid, accurate decisions under extreme pressure. He creates mental compartments that allow him to process complex tactical problems without allowing emotional anxiety to cloud his reasoning. This mastery over his own attention span ensures that he remains sharp and effective even in the middle of total informational chaos. The physical presence he projects relies heavily on the profound psychological mechanics of silence and restraint. In a culture where people constantly shout, argue, and demand validation, silence possesses an extraordinary power to disarm and intimidate. When he confronts adversaries in the shadows, he rarely speaks more than a few essential words. He does not engage in arguments, explain his motives, or respond to insults. This absolute silence forces his opponents to fill the empty space with their own internal fears, guilty conscience, and frantic speculation. By withholding vocal feedback, he deprives his enemies of vital information about his emotional state or tactical intentions, keeping them off balance and anxious. He shows us that silence is not merely the absence of sound, but an active, strategic posture that commands respect, preserves internal energy, and allows a person to observe the world with razor-sharp clarity. This quiet strength creates a sacred space of trust when he interacts with individuals who have been broken by systemic injustice. Victims of violent crime, exploited workers, and neglected children often view authority figures with deep suspicion, having been lied to or abandoned by official institutions time and again. The Dark Hero does not try to win their trust with hollow promises or theatrical sympathy. He offers them something far more valuable: a quiet, reliable presence that takes immediate action to address their danger. He listens to their stories without judgment, secures their physical safety, and restores their sense of dignity without asking for anything in return. He does not promise that the world will be easy or fair, but he proves through his physical presence that they are no longer alone in the dark. This quiet, non-seeking approach to service creates an unbreakable bond of trust between the guardian and the community, demonstrating that true compassion is expressed through action rather than rhetoric. The daily reality of his double life requires a complete renunciation of personal ego and public comfort. To the wealthy social elite of his city, he presents himself as a frivolous, careless heir who cares only for luxury, ease, and shallow entertainment. He intentionally allows the public to view his alter ego as weak, superficial, and unimportant. This dramatic public performance requires an immense level of psychological maturity. Most human beings possess a deep desire to be respected, admired, and understood by their peers, feeling sharp pain when others view them with contempt or mockery. The Dark Hero willingly sacrifices his personal reputation, allowing the world to laugh at his public persona so that his true work can remain hidden in the shadows. He completely separates his sense of self-worth from the opinions of society, finding total fulfillment in the quiet knowledge that his secret sacrifices keep those same mocking citizens safe. He teaches us that a person who is truly secure in their purpose does not need public approval or social status to validate their life. As time advances, the transmission of this unspoken philosophy to the next generation becomes one of his most vital responsibilities. He does not train his young successors by delivering long lectures or demanding blind obedience. He teaches them through shared struggle, quiet example, and relentless operational standards. He places them in controlled, challenging situations where they must learn to analyze danger, control their fear, and make ethical choices under pressure. He holds them to the exact same uncompromising standards he applies to himself, while offering them the strategic guidance and emotional protection he never had as a child. He does not attempt to clone his own personality into them, but rather helps them develop their own unique strengths within the firm boundaries of the shared moral code. By building a disciplined, highly capable next generation, he ensures that the light of justice will continue to burn brightly long after his own physical frame has retired from the frontline street work. The ultimate vision that drives his entire life is not the creation of an eternal war, but the quiet dream of a world where dark guardians are no longer necessary. He does not fight because he loves the darkness, the violence, or the solitary isolation of his subterranean life. He endures those burdens precisely so that others can live in the warm sunlight of peace, order, and normal human happiness. Every crime he stops, every corrupt official he exposes, and every young person he guides is a deliberate step toward building a community that can govern and protect itself without needing a shadowy vigilante on the rooftops. His true victory lies in the gradual awakening of the public conscience, the moment when regular citizens find the courage to hold their leaders accountable, protect their neighbors, and build a clean, just society with their own hands. When you look back at the grand architecture of his life, let his legacy serve as a practical, enduring guide for your own personal journey. Remember that the greatest battle you will ever fight is not against external obstacles or difficult circumstances, but against the internal temptation to become bitter, lazy, or cynical when life treats you unfairly. You do not need extraordinary wealth, advanced technology, or a hidden cave to live a heroic life in your own sphere of influence. You only need the quiet courage to face your internal doubts, the discipline to hold tightly to your core values when shortcuts are offered, and the absolute determination to use your time, energy, and talents to protect and lift up those around you. The dark cowl is merely a shadow, but the unbroken spirit of duty, integrity, and selfless service is a bright, imperishable truth that lives within the reach of every human mind that chooses the path of quiet mastery. When we observe the long trajectory of his extraordinary life, we witness the gradual dissolution of what once seemed like an irreconcilable inner divide. In the early years of his crusade, his existence was torn between two completely different identities: the public billionaire moving through bright social halls, and the dark phantom striking fear into the hearts of criminals in rainy alleys. For a long time, he viewed his public persona merely as a hollow mask, a convenient disguise designed to protect his real work in the shadows. But as decades of deep reflection and relentless service mature his understanding, he achieves a profound inner reconciliation. He realizes that both aspects of his life are vital arms of a single, unified strategy to heal a broken world. The vast financial resources, philanthropic foundations, and social influence of his public identity rebuild the physical infrastructure of the city, funding clean housing, modern hospitals, free education, and youth centers. Meanwhile, his silent work beneath the cowl protects those newly built spaces from the destructive forces of corruption and violence. The mask and the man cease to war against each other. They become complementary tools guided by one undivided soul, proving that true purpose integrates every talent, resource, and aspect of a person's life into a single force for good. This deep integration of purpose, allows him to navigate the inevitable approach of physical mortality with calm, unshakable grace. A normal human being often responds to the arrival of gray hair, slowing reflexes, and aching joints with quiet panic or bitter denial, desperately clinging to youth through artificial means or reckless actions. The Dark Guardian views the aging of his physical frame with the tranquil acceptance of a master builder watching the completion of a grand cathedral. He always understood that his biological body was merely a temporary scaffolding used to construct an immortal idea. As his raw physical strength gradually declines, his strategic foresight, psychological mastery, and tactical wisdom reach their absolute zenith. He moves through the battlefield with an economy of motion that achieves twice the impact with half the physical effort. He stops relying on explosive speed and begins relying on flawless positioning, environmental leverage, and profound anticipation of human behavior. He demonstrates that human growth does not end when physical vigor peaks. Rather, true wisdom allows a person to transition from raw force into deep strategic mastery, showing us how to age with dignity while continuing to serve our higher mission. The way he processes past suffering offers a masterclass in psychological transmutation for anyone carrying heavy emotional baggage. Society often teaches people to view trauma as a permanent disability, an unhealable wound that excuses a lifetime of bitterness, stagnation, or destructive behavior. The Dark Hero rejects this passive victim mindset with every breath he takes. He does not minimize the genuine horror of his childhood loss, nor does he pretend that the pain ever completely disappears. Instead, he treats his scars as structural reinforcement, much like iron that has been tempered in a white-hot furnace. Every injury, every loss, and every heartbreak becomes a source of deeper empathy for the suffering of others and a stronger compass for his moral duty. He shows us that human pain is not liquid poison designed to destroy us, but raw emotional fuel that can be refined into extraordinary resilience, boundless compassion, and unyielding determination. He proves that our darkest moments do not define our limitations. They reveal the depth of steel hidden within our spirit if we choose to forge purpose out of tragedy. When we examine the broader social impact of his life, we see that his greatest achievement was never the defeat of any individual villain, but the subtle, irreversible transformation of the city's collective psychology. Before he stepped out onto the rooftops, the community was suffocated by a pervasive sense of learned helplessness. Citizens believed that corruption was an inescapable law of nature, that honesty was a weakness, and that standing up for justice was an invitation to swift destruction. By standing firmly in the storm year after year without compromising his principles or surrendering to fear, he shattered that paralyzing illusion forever. His unyielding presence proved that a single principled stand can resist an entire ocean of decay. This realization acted as a quiet, powerful catalyst across every level of society. Honest prosecutors began filing daring cases against organized crime networks. Brave factory workers refused to participate in illegal schemes, and ordinary parents taught their children that integrity was worth fighting for. He did not save the city by doing all the work himself. He saved the city by waking up its dormant spirit, demonstrating that moral courage is infectious, and that light always retains the power to pierce the deepest darkness. His daily existence presents a radical critique of modern society's obsession with short-term comfort and superficial validation. In a culture where individuals constantly seek immediate gratification, public applause, and effortless shortcuts to success, his life stands as a monument to the timeless power of slow, invisible discipline. He spends thousands of hours in cold, silent study, practices repetitive physical drills until his movements are flawless, and endures immense physical pain without demanding praise or financial reward. He understands that anything genuinely valuable in human life, whether it is an unshakable character, a clean community, or a lasting legacy, must be built through consistent, unglamorous labor sustained across long periods of quiet dedication. He teaches us to detach our self-worth from immediate rewards and public recognition, finding deep, abiding satisfaction in the quality of our daily effort and the absolute integrity of our choices when no one is watching. The absolute sanctity of his moral boundaries becomes even more vital as he encounters complex modern crises where lines blur easily. In an era dominated by moral relativity, where people constantly adjust their principles to suit current convenience or emotional outrage, his non-negotiable code acts as an unyielding anchor. There are countless moments when breaking his rule against taking life would offer an easy, popular solution to a terrifying problem. The public might cheer his decision, the authorities might turn a blind eye, and the immediate danger would evaporate. Yet he remains entirely unmoved by public pressure or tactical convenience. He recognizes that once a person allows their core values to become negotiable based on circumstances, they no longer possess values at all. They merely possess preferences. An absolute moral boundary is designed precisely for the moments when keeping it is hardest and most costly. By holding his ethical lines tightest when the temptation to break them is greatest, he preserves the purity of his mission and proves that true human dignity consists of choosing principle over pragmatism every single time. As the narrative of this dark guardian reaches its ultimate elevation, we realize that the mask, the cape, and the subterranean cave were never meant to remain the exclusive property of one man. They were created to serve as a universal blueprint for the potential that resides within every human being. The Dark Hero is not an alien god born with invulnerable skin, nor is he a magical creature possessing cosmic powers. He is an ordinary mortal man who looked directly into the dark abyss of human suffering and chose to master himself rather than surrender to despair. His life stands as an open invitation to every individual facing their own personal battles, difficult losses, or corrupt environments. He proves that you do not need supernatural gifts or perfect circumstances to transform your life and protect those around you. You only need the willingness to face your internal fears, the discipline to master your mind, and the absolute commitment to stand for truth and justice, even when you stand completely alone. When you finish reflecting on this long journey through the philosophy of the Dark Guardian, let his example remain as a steady, quiet strength in your daily life. Whenever you face unexpected hardship, whenever you are tempted to choose easy dishonesty over difficult integrity, or whenever the world around you seems cold, cynical, and overwhelming, remember the solitary figure watching over the city in the freezing rain. Remember that the true power of the bat does not belong to the night. It belongs to the light that burns inside an unbroken human heart. Step forward into your own life with total ownership. Take responsibility for your growth. Hold tightly to your highest values, and carry the quiet, unyielding light of courage into whatever dark corners you encounter along your path. When the final curtain slowly descends upon the physical crusade of a mortal protector, the world witnesses a rare and profound spectacle, the quiet transformation of a temporal life into an immortal myth. There comes an inevitable moment when the heavy dark suit can no longer be worn, when the bruised body demands its rest, and when the physical mantle must be passed entirely to the strong young hands prepared across decades of silent mentorship. For a man who defined every waking second of his existence by the violent rhythm of the night, stepping back from the rooftops represents the ultimate test of internal discipline. It is far easier to charge into a room full of armed adversaries than it is to sit quietly in the shadows and trust others to carry forward the work you built with your own blood. Yet he approaches this final transition with the same absolute mastery that guided his nightly patrols. He understands that a true leader does not create dependent followers who collapse the moment the founder vanishes. A true leader builds an enduring system, instills an unshakable moral compass, and empowers those around him to become superior protectors in their own right. He steps back not out of defeat or bitter weakness, but out of a profound, calculated confidence in the legacy he has painstakingly constructed. The ultimate resolution of his lifelong struggle occurs within the quietest chambers of his own mind, where the old, raw childhood wound finally finds its permanent peace. For decades, his every action was anchored to the painful memory of a dark alley, a cold night, and the sudden, senseless loss of his family. That tragic event was the silent engine that drove him through freezing mountains, brutal physical conditioning, and endless sleepless nights in the subterranean cavern. Yet as the long arc of his life reaches its natural culmination, a subtle and beautiful shift takes place inside his spirit. He no longer looks back at that alleyway with paralyzing grief, sharp bitterness, or wild anger. He realizes that while he could never alter the past or bring back what was taken from him, he spent his entire life building a grand protective shield over millions of other families. He transformed a scene of total tragedy into an altar of absolute human dedication. The dark alley ceases to be a place of defeat and becomes the exact birthplace of an immortal idea. He completes the long journey from a broken, terrified orphan kneeling in dirty puddles to a serene, triumphant architect of hope who proved that love for humanity is infinitely stronger than the worst cruelty the world can offer. We must also reflect upon the complete and permanent transformation of the city he dedicated his life to save. When he first stepped out onto the rainy rooftops as a solitary phantom, the urban landscape was a suffocating pit of despair, completely controlled by corrupt institutions, ruthless crime syndicates, and a pervasive sense of social paralysis. Citizens walked the streets with their heads down, expecting nothing from their leaders and living in constant fear of the dark. Through decades of relentless, unyielding effort, he fundamentally altered the moral chemistry of the entire population. He showed the world that corruption is not an inevitable law of nature, but a temporary rot that shrinks when confronted by absolute integrity and courageous action. Today, the city is no longer defined by its shadows, but by the quiet strength of its people. Honest police officers stand firm against temptation, brave citizens speak out against injustice, and young children walk through clean, well-lit neighborhoods without looking over their shoulders in terror. He did not merely clean the streets of physical crime. He healed the collective soul of a community, proving that a single, unyielding life can awaken the hidden light within millions of human hearts. The nature of his true immortality lies in the total separation of the symbol from the mortal individual who first created it. A physical man, no matter how extraordinary his intelligence or how dense his muscle, is ultimately bound by the fragile laws of biology. He ages, he bleeds, and he eventually passes into history like every human being who came before him. But a symbol built upon universal principles of justice, selflessness, discipline, and mercy operates entirely outside the constraints of time. By hiding his face behind a pointed cowl and refusing personal fame, he ensured that the creature of the night became an eternal idea that belongs to the whole world. Long after his name is recorded in history books, the dark silhouette watching over the city will continue to strike terror into the hearts of those who hurt others, while offering instant comfort to the weak and vulnerable. The mantle becomes an imperishable trust passed down through generations, a living beacon showing humanity that no matter how deep the darkness becomes, there will always be a guardian standing ready in the night to defend the innocent. This grand lifetime of sacrifice presents a radical, timeless lesson on the true meaning of human success and personal fulfillment. Modern culture constantly encourages individuals to measure their worth through the collection of superficial badges, public fame, social media applause, massive material hoards, and effortless luxury. The dark hero lived an existence completely opposite to these shallow pursuits. He worked in total secrecy, endured severe physical pain, accepted public misunderstanding without complaint, and channeled his immense private wealth directly into the service of others. Yet his life achieved a depth of meaning, dignity, and quiet fulfillment that money can never purchase and fame can never provide. He proved that true human happiness is not found in receiving, but in giving, not in being served, but in serving, and not in seeking easy comfort, but in dedicating your finite time on earth to a cause far greater than yourself. He shows us that a life lived with absolute alignment between core values and daily actions creates an indestructible peace that no external storm can ever destroy. As the sun slowly rises over the tall glass towers and historical stone buildings of his home city, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold, rose, and warm light, the long night shift comes to its ultimate peaceful conclusion. Deep beneath the bedrock of his estate, in the vast subterranean sanctuary that witnessed thousands of hours of intense study, brutal physical training, and quiet grief, the dark suit hangs silently in its glass display case. The high-tech monitors hum softly in the quiet air, and the underground water drips with a steady, peaceful rhythm. The old warrior stands by the edge of the subterranean platform, looking out into the warm morning light filtering through the natural stone openings above. His body bears the heavy scars of 1,000 battles, but his eyes are clear, calm, and completely at peace. He knows that his work is finished, that his students are ready, and that the city rests securely under the watch of a new generation. He steps out of the dark cave and into the quiet morning air, a mortal man who fought the ultimate battle against despair and won a complete, undeniable victory for the human spirit. When you finish listening to this long philosophical exploration and step back into the routine of your own daily life, carry the quiet, unyielding essence of the dark guardian deep within your mind. Life will inevitably present you with its own dark alleys, unexpected hardships, painful personal losses, moments of deep uncertainty, and environments where compromise and dishonesty seem like the only easy paths forward. In those critical moments when your character is tested in the fire, remember the lesson of the solitary watcher on the rainy roof. Remember that you possess the absolute, God-given power to master your internal fears, control your emotional reactions, and choose integrity over convenience every single time. You do not need a dark cape, a high-tech car, or millions of dollars to be a hero in your own world. You only need the quiet courage to stand up for those who cannot defend themselves, the discipline to hold tightly to your principles when life gets hard, and the unyielding determination to leave your small corner of the world a little brighter, safer, and more just than you found it. The cowl was merely theater, but the unbroken spirit of duty, mercy, and selfless service is a real, living truth that belongs to you, to me, and to every human heart brave enough to choose the light.